ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to go once again for another episode of It's Me Speaking to You. I'm, as always, your host, Mr. Jeffrey Wilson, coming to you live and direct from the gateway to the West, St. Louis, Missouri. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have on a heavy hitter, and I mean that in the most literal, of way. This is a former UFC vet, and in a recent article, I think it was around May on Fox Sports, Robbie Lawler, who this gentleman trained with. Of all the people Robbie Lawler's been hit by, he said this is the hardest hitting cat he's ever been hit by, and that was also corroborated by UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich. We have on Mr. Drew Mcfedries on the program. What's up, brother?
Nothing at all. Just kind of living life, you know.
Just chilling out, man. I mean, I've been following you on the FaceSpace for a while. I mean, I know you're an avid fisherman. I saw you something about you were maybe opening up a gym, getting back into training stuff. What are you up to now, my man?
Yeah, I've been thinking about trying to get a little space or lease some kind of small gym just so that I can get in there and do my own thing. But other than that, yeah, I mean, even this morning I got up about like 3:30, 4:30. I got a little time on the water and, you know, go out there, catch a few fish, come home, chill out for a little bit, and go back to work.
The grind. I hear you. And that home is, you're living in Bettendorf, Iowa, is that correct?
I'm actually in Davenport. I've always grown up in Davenport.
Ah, okay. Well, see, I was born in Rock Island, in fact, and was raised essentially in Davenport. Went to North High School, graduated in 1991, so I'm sure we're very familiar stomping grounds. So you graduated, did you graduate Bettendorf High School?
Yeah, Bettendorf in 96.
So you probably were familiar with like Tavian Banks, Levance Banks, Greg Brown.
Yeah, I actually know all those guys. Not really well. I probably know Levance and Greg actually better than I know Tavian, but I mean, I've only met Tavian or hung out with him a few times.
Right. Yeah, so those are my cats I grew up with, you know, shout out to Greg Brown, Levance Banks, Tavian Banks, as well as my nephew. You might be more familiar with my nephew, Jared Masterson. He was a pretty badass football player for Bettendorf, and they went to state a couple times.
No, never knew the name or heard of him.
Ah, that's all right, you know.
I was probably long gone, you know.
Right, that's true. So growing up there in the old Quad Cities, man, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you were born in Ames, and I'm not sure exactly when you got to Bettendorf. As an individual myself growing up in that area, it was just kind of a quaint town, man. It's really it was a little more quiet, actually. There was, as you could probably attest to, there's been a little more crime in that area. What are your thoughts on growing up or just, you know, living in the Quad Cities? What keeps you busy?
I have a different opinion of the town now than I did probably when I was in high school or younger. But right. I think that it's a little town trying to be big, you know. It has grown a lot. I mean, we've added on so much, you know, from the time I was in high school to now. But I will say crime rates are probably going sky high right now because you have a lot of people who they don't make a lot of money and they're starting to see bigger things and they're trying to figure out how to get them, you know, without putting in the work kind of thing.
Right.
And actually from right where I live right now, about 3 blocks away, a guy got stabbed with a Bowie knife. I believe it was straight through the chest, almost out the back. And,
recently?
I mean, it wasn't very recent. I'd say it was probably a year ago. But, I mean, we are having a lot of shootings and stabbings and things.
Well, I'm not sure exactly where you're at, but I grew up not too far from North High School. Of course, a lot of people who don't, you know where this is, you know, if you're not from there. But, you know, in an area yesterday, a couple of days ago, Kimberly Village, I mean, about as most suburbia as you can get, a girl was walking home from a bonfire, a 15-year-old girl, got shot about 12:30 at night. And not too far from there, some small-time drug deal was going down. The guy held onto his truck and, you know, got thrown off the truck and, you know, he died. So this is all like within a couple of days. So it's crazy to read that stuff, man. That was so odd back in the day, but now it seems like a little more commonplace. guess that's a social commentary, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, just to hit home with, what goes on in our area, I mean, it is a small town, but even my mom became a victim of, you know, the drug scene and, what goes on in the streets. And,
Sure.
if you live that life, that's how you end up. I mean, you can become a statistic real quick around here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of goes for anywhere, man. I mean, if you like you said, if you live by the sword of sorts, you're kind of gonna wind up by the sword. So, growing up, obviously, you graduated from Bettendorf High School, and then you went to Iowa Central Community College. And is that the same school that John Jones went to, or is that a different community college?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
There's actually, you know what, as far as junior colleges go, a lot of good athletes went to that school. I don't really know why or what the attraction, to me or other guys was to go there, but there's been a lot of great athletes that went to that school. I mean, not just fighters, but, soccer players and actually I know a couple of baseball players and, people who did go and go on to be professional athletes. A lot of guys went through that little community school. It's pretty surprising.
Yeah, Iowa's always been known for pumping out some good athletes. University of Iowa, and like you said, Iowa Central Community College. So if you don't mind, man, how did you get? Like you said, man, growing up in kind of tumultuous kind of surroundings, you kind of need that. I guess that's kind of the determining factor statistically of the kids who make it and kids who don't. Somebody, somewhere to channel some of the stuff or to occupy yourself, in kind of those environments. How did you get yourself linked up with, I guess, mixed martial arts and, Pat and the militant fighting system? How'd that start out for you?
Well, I think that, growing up, in a sense, I just looked around myself and I saw everything as far as I did not want to follow the path that was given to me. So I had to find a way to get myself out of there. And I did not want to, I saw all these people involved in drugs and getting arrested, and, I never wanted to be like them. So I was idolizing other people, and I was following the path of other people that would, probably give me a more positive ending, I should say. So I just started kind of emulating what I thought, would be a successful life, not to say that that's what I ended up with or where I was going to end up in any way, shape, or form, but, I knew that these people that I was living around, hanging around, or, how I grew up, I knew that that wasn't it. And so, going through Bettendorf, that definitely changed my opinion of how I see the world and how people work and where your money comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Where I lived, everybody was, dealing drugs or doing something dirty and underhanded to make their money.
Mm-hmm.
Where going to Bettendorf, it was all business people. Everybody owned a company. Or,
sure.
They had, and then they had 10 times more than the best drug dealer on the block. These guys with, a Cadillac and some nice shoes, they thought they had it made, but these people were living in $350,000 to $500,000 houses and had no problems in the world.
Right.
So going through there, I went to Bettendorf, Iowa Central, I went to St. Ambrose, and I had a lot of, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but
studied sports management at St. Ambrose, didn't you?
I did. I really studied more business than anything. I ended up changing my major just because, how should I say it? I was going through all these business classes, and at the time I was having issues, with my graduate classes, and I was so busy. I was playing football, ran track. I did all these things, and so I changed my major just to kind of take the heat off, and then ended up quitting school anyway. So I only, right now, I have 17 credits to finish college, and it's the only thing I want to do at this point in time. But
yeah, that's like a semester now, isn't it? I don't even know I forget how that breaks down. It's been a while.
Right. It'd be like if I split it in half, it'd probably be about a year. But at that point, I quit college, and it was just more. It was more to find myself. I was so buried in school. I was buried in classes, buried in the workout, buried in practices, buried in all this pressure. There, my brother, my younger brother, had been taken away, and he was in foster care. My sisters were in foster care because they were much younger than me. Because my mom was running the streets, and she was doing drugs, and so my younger sisters and brother were taken away, and I was working to support myself and go to school, and I was just so buried in everything that I just couldn't handle it.
Something had to give.
Right. So I quit school, and I kind of went out there to find myself, and it was real interesting. There was this thing called Tuesday Night Fights. Came to a club that I was working at, and Monty Cox ran those fights.
Was that Vic Ferrari's?
It wasn't at the. It was Vic Ferrari.
That location though. Oh wow,
right.
I remember
They
that.
Changed it.
Hickabilly.
They changed it to Stars and Stripes.
Stars and Stripes. Yeah, I remember a guy Hickabilly or something like that. Dude, that was fun.
So if anybody, I think it's really funny because when you bring up Stars and Stripes, everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, yeah, man, we used to go out there. Everybody used to beat each other up.
That was the spot, man. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. So it was. I remember it being summer. It was probably the summer of about 2000 or so, and I started doing these boxing matches, and I was never really interested in MMA. I wasn't even interested in boxing, but I was just a big, strong kid. I played football, I ran track, I played soccer, baseball, basketball, you name it, I did it, wrestling. I did it all in high school. I lettered in every sport in high school. I played football, ran track, and played a couple of semi-pro soccer games. I did everything. And at this point, a lot of people were like, if you think you're such a tough athlete or you think you're bad, you jump up there in the ring. And I was like, first off, and if you know, like I know, if you're from my area, if you're from Rock Island, you grew up in Davenport. I grew up on Ripley Street. I grew up a block away from Central High School.
Okay.
And if you know the area,
yep.
A fight, if we got in a one-on-one fight, you were lucky, So
it's group therapy,
like,
yeah.
Right. I was like, so a boxing match to me was nothing. So I decided to do it, and it really was what I thought it would be. To me, a one-on-one fight was nothing. If I lost, I lost, and I went on about my business. But I didn't lose much. We had a lot of little boxing matches, and then I started doing the MMA matches. And I met Pat Miletich. Actually, it's an interesting story, but I knew who Pat was. I didn't know really what his level was of MMA, or I didn't really know what he was doing, but I knew him. And Lee Murray came to town from England, and that was the first time that I really met Pat. But Monty Cox and Pat Miletich were looking at Lee Murray, and they wanted to take Lee Murray and kind of mold him into an American champion kind of thing. And it was his first time in town, and I got picked to fight Lee Murray. And me and Lee Murray had it out. We fought for probably about 8 minutes, and I pounded on that dude. And I knew nothing. I knew nothing of MMA. I had no idea what I was doing. And I pounded on the guy, and he ended up hitting me with an arm bar, and he won the match. But I think that's what impressed Pat. I think that at that point, Pat was like, I can't have this guy walking around, without being in my gym. He's like, I can't have this guy out there and, banging on my guys out there in the world. So Pat pretty much said, hey, come to the gym, let's train together. Let's see what happens with you. And, here I am, 17 years later.
Right, and history was made, man. I mean, watching, your highlight really before this. I mean, I obviously, remember your career and stuff, but I mean, you did used to thump, brother. I mean, you used to put people straight out.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, people watch those highlight films and stuff like that, and I don't really, I I don't really brag about myself, or I'm not really into
Right.
that.
No, no, no.
But what I will say is, most of those guys that I fought and that you see on that highlight reel or whatever, those are some of the best. You know,
Oh,
some
absolutely.
of those guys they're at the top. And could you imagine what happened in those early days when we weren't filming, matches?
Right.
And these were guys that were, amateurs or better, like I shouldn't say better. Amateurs were worse, random people who were just jumping in the ring. I mean, I'll tell you what, I remember fighting guys that the match wouldn't last 30 seconds. I hit a guy one time and knock him clean out, and he'd be out for 5-10 minutes. I thought the guy was dead. Alongside of me, and it was funny because Monty Cox ran the show, and after a while, Monty and a couple of other guys at the bar, they were like, "You guys can't fight anymore." And he was talking about me, and he was talking about Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler actually at about 19, he was faster than lightning. I tell you what, he could hit you 3 times, and you wouldn't even hear the sound before the guy hit the ground.
Robbie's a beast, dude.
But at 19 years old,
yeah,
he was a phenom. I mean, he was a Vitor Belfort. He was.
I think Pat said he started training with him when he was 16, in fact, too. So, I mean, he was obviously putting in the work even before,
Yeah, I think that Robbie's background was more wrestling, though. Like, he came and saw Pat kind of after. It was a kind of an after-school thing, and they would wrestle. And, a lot of the guys, they would work out with him, but they didn't want to beat him up because he was so young. So
right.
They didn't want to get him. They didn't want to turn him to mush before he got started.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, Robbie started probably a little before me, but he was younger. But at the time, Monty Cox did not want us fighting in his show. And it was a small town show, but Monty Cox did not want us fighting in that show. I mean, some of those nights were brutal. I mean, there was a lot of people sent to the hospital, and, you got to imagine, Joe Slick, Jeremy Horn.
Joe Slick.
Do you remember Joe Slick?
That name sounds really familiar.
I mean, anybody in the MMA world usually knows Joe Slick.
Is he from the Quad too?
Yeah, I mean, he trained with Pat Miletich. He fought everywhere, Japan, and I mean, he fought all over the world. Not to say he was the best in the world, but he was so good on the ground. He was really methodical on the ground. But Jens Pulver, before Jens Pulver had a title, all these guys fought at this Tuesday night fights. Matt Hughes, I never saw Matt Hughes fight there. Tim Sylvia did. Tim Sylvia fought in the same little show. God, I mean, some of these guys, I'm trying to think.
I remember those Tuesday nights, man. That was, I don't know how long that went on, but that was, I definitely, me and my bro and some of our friends, we would go down there. I mean, that was a great time, man. Definitely people, it would get a little out of hand sometimes, but man, a great time was had by all.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like, so many people would go to those shows thinking, oh, I'm just going to get up in there and box a little bit. And this guy's boxing a world champion from, like, Ian Freeman or something, who's in
right.
there. Like, and I'll tell you what, it was crazy because you would look around the room. There was a guy, Rick Gravison, and you would look around the room and you'd see these characters. And I'm telling you, back then, you knew exactly who the fighters were. Even when I saw Lee Murray for the first time, I was like, you guys are not, you're not fooling me. I know this guy's a monster, but I'll fight him.
Right.
Like, I wasn't scared of him, but I'll tell you what, he had big hands. I mean, he was skinny, but he was all ripped. And I mean, his look was so hard. And I don't know, man, that was pretty much the start for me. And then just over the years, it evolved. And obviously, I ended up in the UFC. I think that my arrival at the UFC was a little late, but that was kind of sidelined because I got sick and I suffered for probably about 2 years before I bounced back, and I still made it. So.
Yeah, and so that was your debut. What was that, 2001? Looks like Nate Quarry, tough opponent.
Nate Quarry was stud at the time. Yeah, and I really had no clue who Nate Corey was, but he was a stud.
So, I mean, obviously, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts on the product now. That it's changed quite a bit. I'm sure you would agree. First of all, what are your thoughts on the product now? You know, the whole Reebok deal. You know, fighters really not getting the dough they were getting before. The top guys are. But what are your thoughts on the product now?
I think the sport has been raped. You know, it's watered down. It's all entertainment. It's not. There is no. I think there used to be a respect for the fight and a respect for fighters. Now they're just pulling anybody out of anywhere to create a show.
When that was one of.
That's why.
No, I'm sorry. Well, I was one of my first conversations with Pat. The rankings. I was just like the perfect example was Chael Sonnen losing to Anderson, and then getting a light heavyweight fight with John Bones Jones just because he stepped up. I mean, what happened to the rankings? It does, like you said, it cheapens it all. You know what I mean?
Right. You have guys that have been involved in the sport or have fought on that level for so long, and you're just going to hand a title to a guy because he's popular.
Yeah.
Or because he has a funny haircut or a different tattoo, or, I mean, really, that's what they're doing. And another thing is, like, people talk about Conor McGregor, and I don't even know the guy really. I don't have any issues with Conor McGregor, but they'll do anything to make that money. And if you look at a Conor McGregor, I think that some people don't realize. As soon as he's beat, as soon as he's done, there's going to be another one.
Sure.
And so when I say that, I'm saying that there's going to be another Conor McGregor, the guy who runs his mouth on the mic and whatever else. And if you look behind him, if you look, from the past, who was Conor McGregor before he existed? Maybe Tito Ortiz or
Shoney Carter. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying, the original. But that's kind of what we were talking about, Pat and I. What do you think that detracts from it, bro? Because even Conor says, in most fighters, they say, I have this small window, especially now with the Reebok deal. You got to maximize your dough in that small, short period of time. Perfect example, somebody like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who I had on my show. The dude's a beast. I think he's absolutely sick. And, for him to, whatever, the whole rankings gets crazy because he was promised a fight when he beat Hendricks, and then he had to go through Rory. Just because, Dana doesn't think he's, all, promotable and marketable like that.
Yeah, it's garbage. I think that, in our day, I guess, when I was coming through, you just fought whoever got put in front of you, in the start. And another thing is, when I started out, we fought tournaments. I was lucky to miss a few things like headbutts and strikes, elbow strikes to the spine, and the sport was vicious. When I got into it, and I remember getting into MMA, or back then we'd be called pit fighters, or it was called no holds barred.
Yeah, pit fighters.
They had different names for it.
Sure.
Now it's MMA, but honestly, I think it's very watered down. Everybody's an MMA fighter. These guys lay in bed at night rubbing their ears to get cauliflower ears. And it's like, gosh, it's like dressing up you can dress up any schoolgirl and call her a fighter now, and she makes $1 million. And all these fighters are protected. They're so protected, and that's why you see champions. A lot of people think, it's funny because I go to the gyms and stuff and nobody knows me, and that's okay. But they start talking about MMA, and I heard some people talking about Ronda Rousey, and they're like, oh, it was so sad to see Ronda Rousey go. And I kind of was like, to me, she was never really like a stud champion. You know what I mean? The pool was very small, and they were giving her people to beat. And then when she finally got a real fight, she got handled, and I think there's a lot of those fighters out there. They're not fighting any real tough fights. A lot of them are, like you're saying, they're marketable or promotable, So they'll do anything they can do to get those people a title. When I was going through the systems, guys like Matt Hughes, Matt Hughes earned his title.
Oh yeah.
And I only know those guys personally. I don't know about some of the other guys, but guys like Jens Pulver, he earned his title. I'm telling you what, Jens Pulver, he fought every guy at his weight class that was the toughest in the world. I remember him fighting Carl Uno. And Carl Uno could take a shot from 10 feet away, and that guy was grease lightning, I mean, Jens Pulver earned his title, guys like that.
Even when Matt, Frank Trigg, BJ Penn, like the division was so much deeper. And like I said, you were really fighting the best of the best. Not that, especially kind of that bantamweight women's division, that there is not a lot of depth to that. And even like Johanna's, I don't want to massacre her last name, that division, she's going to just run through all those guys just because, she's that good. They're just kind of, playing catch up. I think everybody in the UFC, hopefully, they're there for a reason. But like you said, with that lack of depth of the roster, it's they just kind of keep feeding these guys just the same fights a little bit, just to make them shine a little bit more.
Right. I can even say, just because I know these guys a little more personally, but Robbie Lawler, how long has Robbie Lawler been around?
Right.
Forever. He's fought everyone, not only at 70, but he's fought a lot of guys at 85, and...
Yeah, he's another great example, too. That division is just murderer's row.
Right, and he came back, and, he went back to 70, which I think is his natural, fighting weight, and, man, I mean, everybody's like, that guy's so, he's this, he's that. Yeah, it took him 15, 20 years to develop that.
Yeah.
Where these guys, they're going down to their local jiu-jitsu, whatever, and they're a champion in 2 years just because they're cool. They're cool guys.
Yeah, Robbie's story is definitely the epitome of earning that shit, dude, because he, like I said, 15 years, he's beaten everybody coming out of Strikeforce, and as long as he's been in the game, to still be on that elite level, facing these cats he's taken out, Carlos Condit, Rory McDonald. I mean, Robbie, man, like I told Pat, the dude's frightening, first of all, but he's something special, man. That dude is really, really something special.
Yeah, and he's evolved. I mean, and again, I can only talk about him because I know him more personally.
Sure.
But some of these guys are so evolved, and they're not only hard hitters, or they're not only fast, or some of them have like a natural ability, but he's definitely evolved his fight game to a point where, I mean, fighting to him is kind of like a handshake, and I'm telling you, that dude is on point. I mean, there's no nerves about him anymore. He walks out and he does his job. He does it well. He does it very well.
So what goes without saying. Then you have him. Okay, so, yeah. Who do you have, him and Tyrone Woodley? I just assume your answer, but go ahead and say it.
Yeah, I always have to say Robbie. Here's the thing too. I think people underestimate his wrestling ability, and I believe Tyrone Woodley's more of a wrestler, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would you say?
Oh yeah.
It's not that I don't think that Tyrone Woodley has the ability to wrestle Robbie or keep him in the cage or, give him pressure. What I see happening is people don't realize that Robbie's takedown defense is unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Guys cannot take him down and hold him down. It just doesn't happen. You even saw it against Hendricks. I mean, his hand control, his ability to just be on one leg. I mean, even if you get the single, I mean, his ability to sit up on one leg and give you trouble. I mean, and I think Hendricks is as good a wrestler as anybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And,
yeah.
Hendricks couldn't keep him down there. He just couldn't. And I'll tell you right now, I don't see Woodley doing that. And everybody knows if you got to stand with Robbie, you lose.
Well, and the other thing, it's like the longer the fight goes, Robbie gets energized. That the way, like I told Pat, at the end of that last Hendricks fight, the way Robbie, I think it was Big John stepped in between him, but the way Robbie was still walking him down, ready to go, you saw Hendricks looking out of the corner of his eye like, dude, please get this fucker away from me, dude. He's going to freaking kill me, dude. So, and people, it's kind of the conventional wisdom. The longer the fight Robbie goes, Robbie, comes on, and Tyrone's kind of the opposite. The longer it goes, cardio appears to be an issue with him. So what do you think about that aspect of it?
Definitely, and I think that was just the way we were trained. Coming through, Pat's place or the so-called Militich system, we were always trained to keep moving side to side and moving forward. And for myself, I know that I was always trained never to go straight back, and I guess I just took that as going straight forward.
I gotta go back.
So,
yeah.
we were always trained never to go straight back. So if you did anything, you went left to right, and if anything, you go straight forward. So even if you watch me fight, I think some of my better fights. Not to say that I could do it today, but I walk guys down the exact same way. I walk straight into people.
Mm-hmm.
I never really shied away from the combat part of it. And I think that a lot of people would say the same things about me. They would say, get the guy away from me. Just get him away. And a lot of guys, I always noticed in my fights, you always had guys backing away. I would just walk the guy down. Bobby does the same stuff.
Yeah, you could definitely see that similarity for sure.
And we almost welcome kicks. Like, go ahead and try to kick, because I'm going to blast you,
That's what you're talking about. The evolution, man. When Robbie, even when he's tired, dude, and I've never been in there, so I don't know, but I know even throwing ab punch when you're tired is fucking exhausting. Robbie will get in there, and he'll just throw wicked combinations of punches, elbows, knees, kicks, like in the 5th round. It's just crazy.
Right. And that's the way we were trained, but we used to do that to each other,
Right.
Like I said, there were times where me and, I always bring the old school guys up just because those are the guys I know, again, more personally, but there were times where me and Jeremy Horn, as I evolved and I got better, me and Jeremy Horn, we would go back and forth for a half hour, smiling and laughing at each other, but probably, if one of us made a mistake, somebody would get hurt real bad, Tony Frippen was another guy that I remember, we go pretty hard. Me and Tim Sylvia, we always went hard, and we would do that for an hour. We sparred for an hour hard.
Well, and listening to Pat and hearing, documentaries on the military fighting system, and I think in any kind of fighting system when you get into the cage, I think that's a good philosophy to have, quite frankly. Not so much as far as like pounding the shit out of each other for 5 rounds, but just staying moving. Going pretty hard for 5 rounds because, or even longer, because like Pat says, do it in the gym because you don't want to be in a fight for round 4 or 5, suck and win. I can only imagine the nightmare scenario that is. Having somebody come at you, like trying to kill you, basically, and you're sitting there, unable to really defend yourself because you're fucking exhausted.
Yeah, I had night after night like that. We were just trained that way. We would probably do like a warm-up round or 2, and then we would spar through till about 10 minutes till. So we would do 5. I'd say we'd probably do about at least 7 5-minute rounds, And those rounds were hard.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I don't know if you ever knew Noah Imfer. Noah Imfer, Brad Eilers, Tim Sylvia, Ben Rothwell.
Oh, yeah. No Ben. You have no of them. Tim, obviously Ben.
Yeah, Ryan.
Rory.
Ryan McGivern.
Rory Markham.
Rory Markham. I'm telling you, we would go at each other, not just. This wasn't just. We're just playing around, pit-patting.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, like Ryan McGivern, he's an Olympic-level athlete. That's what a lot of people, he's the nicest guy in the world, but he's an Olympic-level athlete. If I didn't hit that guy as hard as I could, he would run me in the ground and beat on me. And that's all I could do. I had to grease him every time he came near me.
Right.
Guys like Noah Imfer, I think he also developed, from the TV show. He came to our camp.
The Ultimate Fighter, was he on the Ultimate Fighter TV show? Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd be 195 pounds, maybe 200 pounds. This kid would be 215, 220, and he would be coming at me with everything he had. I had to knock him out, man. I had to knock him out, or else he had no fear of me,
Yeah, Either you or me.
Yeah, and well, it wasn't so much that. It was just the fact that we went so hard that if you didn't make a guy fear you, he'll beat you to a pulp. So it was the same philosophy in our fights that it was in the gym. And I remember Mike Whitehead, and again, I'm just going back, but we had I'm trying to think of his name, Brad Imes. I don't know if Brad Imes came through, the Ultimate Fighter as well. God, I tell you what, we had a real stacked gym when it was UFC guys and IFL guys. But even previous to that, we had tons of studs.
Well, I mean, you guys were just pumping out champions, man. Chens, Matt, Pat, Tim. It was, people want to get down with champions, man.
Yeah, back in the early days, and then when the IFL came around, obviously they had the IFL team.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, man, all those guys, I mean, they went out and slaughtered other teams. It was a slaughter.
Yeah, I remember that, dude, the old IFL. At the mark of the Quad Cities. I remember.
Pretty much, yeah.
Good shit, man. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, military fighting system, and just in general, man. You kind of had to have that Spartan kind of mentality about it, because obviously stepping into the cage is no joke, and you need to be peak physical, peak cardio to be handling that, man. Because that's not the place to be. Like I said, not to be finding out you don't have it. You don't have what it takes. It's the wrong time to be finding that out.
Yeah, and even the guys who did have it, we all had those days where, even if I just talk about myself, we all had our days where we were beat down, we were worn out, we were tired, and the round started and some dude hit you and you just start crying because you just know you can't defend yourself. I mean, there was a lot of emotional, breakdowns and a lot of blood and tears, man. I mean, I tell you what, I've seen all those guys. I've seen a lot of guys shed a tear, cutting weight and, just 3 grueling months of training for one match, and
right.
I tell you what, I mean, it was really hardcore stuff.
Oh, fuck, dude. It's the road less traveled, man, and the road less traveled is that way for a very, very good reason, my friend. Well, cool, man. Interesting to go down a little memory lane here, brother. So are you doing, like I said, are you just kind of staying in shape now, doing a little bit of training, obviously not competing in any way, but still keeping the sword sharp, if you will?
Honestly, I have not trained. I have not hit a bag. I've not hit a mitt or hit a person in I don't know how long. I'll say that, no, I haven't trained MMA specifically. I do work out. I work out every day.
Mm-hmm.
I run, I bike, I lift weights. I would like to be involved in MMA. I think, again, if you've been here or lived in my area, I think once you have success, sometimes the area doesn't facilitate success for whatever reason. Our area is more like get a job and grind out your last 40 years,
Right.
I mean, it is, and people rely on that. They think that, oh, well, you work at the mill or whatever the local dog food plant. Oh, you're doing all right. And to me, I just don't see life that way.
Right.
But yeah, man, I'll be honest. I'm sticking to my fishing thing. I really enjoy my bass fishing, and I work out every day. I go to work, just live life, I would really like to get involved with a gym or my own gym or maybe even some coaching, so I could probably give back, to a lot of people who gave to me.
Well, with how huge the sport is, man, I mean, especially coming from the Quad Cities and especially, being a UFC veteran, former member of a military fighting system like that, not a lot of people have that on their resume. So that definitely, I would think, would be, pretty huge selling point to any potential coach looking for somebody to help, teach some youngins.
And you would think that, but in our area, they just don't want to pay you. I mean, it's just the way it is. A guy will go out and he'll spend $80 on an Affliction T-shirt, But he's not going to spend,
Yeah.
spend $10 to have Pat Miletich coach him, or
Right.
And Pat, I'll drive to Pat's house. It's 10 minutes away from me, But it's difficult to turn $1 here on whatever your successful thing is. We have guys in our area that ride dirt bikes, or we have talented people in our area, but the majority of the people out here don't follow it, or they don't facilitate to it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't sponsor you. If you walk into one of these places and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a sponsor," they laugh at you, and they don't understand the marketing. They don't understand, they don't understand the power of media today.
Right, absolutely.
Look at a company like Affliction. They went after the top names, and they became a top name. In our time, when we had all the super studs right here, I walked into a place and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a sponsorship." They laughed at me, and I'm in the UFC.
Right.
They're laughing at me, and I'm thinking, that's funny. Just that a small Midwest town can laugh at a guy who's been so successful in the world.
Yeah, I think, I'm coming from where you are, it makes it seem like, and I think you're exactly right in that aspect, that small town mentality, but I think that's kind of indicative in a lot of places, bro. I think a lot of people want to kind of be involved or ascribe themselves to a former UFC fighter, et cetera, but they don't. I notice a lot of that in St. Louis too, bro. They want, hey man, let me get this service for nothing, even though you are very established, et cetera, et cetera. But, in my estimation, kind of like this podcast or the podcast with me and Pat, it's really incumbent upon us now, because the world's changed, the economy's changed, to kind of create your own lane. You know what I mean? Like I said, create your own gym, create your own brand, if you will, as opposed to maybe trying to get with another brand, especially with your name, your recognition, all the things you've done. I think that carries a lot of weight in whatever it is you wanted to do, a UFC, a MMA school, a bait and tackle. You know what I mean? You got some weight behind your name, so that definitely is. It's useful, right. But yeah, it is interesting. Right. Yeah, a lot of people don't. I think there's just some ignorance, man. There's some ignorance as to how huge the sport is. There's just ignorance as to how easy it is to market now. You don't have to break the bank to market with social media being there. But yeah, people just I don't know.
Well, one of the things that I bring up, just because I use his stuff, is there's a guy by the name of Skeet Reese. He was a Bassmasters champion, and not to say I'm on a championship level or nothing like that, but like you're saying, my name does carry a little weight. Or yeah. I'll tell you right now, in my small town, a lot of people know me, and he got with a company called Wright and McGill. Wright and McGill was just a kind of a regular fishing rod company, and what this guy did, they took him on, they sponsored him, and they took him on and said, "Okay, well, what do you want your fishing rods to look like?" And he said, "I want these colors. I want it to feel like this. I want these kind of grips. I want these kind of eyelets. I want..." And what he did was he established what he liked and what he felt, and he used that company to develop a product, and now they have a multi-million-dollar company.
There you go.
I'll probably even say a multi-billion-dollar company. I really don't know, but I use the guy's stuff, and it's in Walmart, it's in Gander Mountain, it's in Bass Pro, and so I think that when you look at MMA, and again you take like Affliction, and this is why the UFC kind of changed their ideas on sponsorship, because you take a small T-shirt company, Warrior Wear, Tap Out, Affliction, you could throw a lot of names out there. People who sponsored some of the top dogs, Affliction was able to build their own show off a T-shirt, and then they build a whole product line of clothes off of the backs of Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, and I think the marketing and the sponsorships, as ridiculous as some people think it is, I think it is ignorance for them not to look out there in the world and see that these named guys built and developed their products based off what they feel or the look that, a look that they liked.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these companies blew up, off of some of these other guys' ideas. and they won't even, people will look at you and laugh when you say a $250 sponsorship. That's a joke to them. And I don't know.
No, I mean,
giving a little to get a lot, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's, I don't know, kind of from a business standpoint, that's kind of a survival of the fittest, because if you can't get with like the new modes of marketing and advertising and kind of the new mediums, you're not going to sustain, you're just kind of going to fall by the wayside, especially, $250 sponsorship. Come on, man, give me a break. But yeah, no, I feel you. I feel you. But I mean, like I said, man, do you, I'm anxious to, when I saw you were opening the gym, I was like, cool, because I'm moving back there here in a few, probably a few months. Me and Pat are going to build to set up a studio there to do our podcast, The Conspiracy Farm, and anything I can obviously do to help you kind of get the word out there on whatever you're doing, brother. Like I said, and it's really whatever town you're in, man, and definitely in St. Louis, everything is very kind of cliquish, politickish, et cetera. It's really incumbent on everybody, you, me, to get with the right people, man, to build the right team, if you will, that everybody's kind of moving to that next level, man. If you got people who you're you're talking about trying to reach out to who don't kind of get it, you just kind of got to keep it moving, man, because, if they don't kind of get what you're laying down in this new age of what we're talking about, marketing and advertising, then, sorry, you just can't waste too much breath on it.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Pat Miletich, and when I got involved in the sport, I walked into a racquetball court. Pat had a racquetball court.
Ultimate Fitness.
Right, and that's where he trained. He was a champion, and he trained at a racquetball court, So when I walked into that room, I met probably Jens Pulver for the first time. I met Jeremy Horn for the first time, Mark Hansen, trying to think of other guys. Steve. I'm trying to think. How am I losing his last name right now? I got his face. I can't think of his last name. He was a Augustana wrestler. Besides the point, I met a lot of guys who were just monsters, and they trained in this little facility. This little room was their training center.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I could have something like that, I don't need anything big, but that's what I was thinking. I wanted to bring back toughness,
Yeah.
If I could say toughness, some of these guys, I really think they should be wearing skirts. They don't want to fight anybody tough. They'll take less pay so that they get a W. In our area, we got a lot of guys claiming a lot of things, especially in our area. Everybody's trained with Pat Miletich, and they're all best friends with Pat Miletich, and Pat Miletich taught them the 5-point finger heart exploding death punch or whatever.
The dim mac.
It's in our area. Everybody talks like that, but
right.
If you're like, yeah, let's go run some hills. Oh, I don't run hills. Okay, well, what do you do? I ride my bike for cardio. Okay, well, you need to bring back some of these tough characters.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to do. If I could get a small spot, bring back some tough guys. Don't get me wrong. Women's cardio to the left, fighters to the right. But what we have right now is we have those classes are a mixed group. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I agree with that, man. And we kind of jive with each other on how the sport has. I'm a huge fan back to probably late '90s. I've always been a martial arts fan, Bruce Lee and all that shit. But as far as I remember the stuff you're talking about, pit fighting. I remember Pat fighting Dan Severin down at John O'Donnell. There needs to be
no weight classes,
dude. I saw that. I'm like, dude, this should be illegal. But Pat, that's when I really was like, whatever. That shit's like for real. And then going up to halftime to watch them hang out and drink, I was like, what? Because I'm a professional wrestling geek. I thought they hated each other, et cetera. So, but no, per your point, there needs to be more of that toughness, because with this, I don't know what's going to happen, man, in the next 5 years. I'll ask you, with the brand, is it going to be bought? If the UFC is bought, are they going to go more? Maintain this whole ratings or rankings are kind of irrelevant. Who brings the most numbers? Because if that's the case, like you said, people are going to be cherry picking fights, and you're not really going to see the best fighters in the world. Whereas the cats who were cut from you guys' cloth, Robbie Lawler's the champion today still. So that type of fighting still exists, obviously.
Yeah, what I could see in the future is, honestly, I think UFC is buried. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that UFC is kind of done. They have a million fighters who can't fight.
What do you see as a
and
UFC replacement? You see Bellator possibly replacing that?
No, it might go the way of boxing. Look at a guy like Conor McGregor. I'll just bring him up again just because he's the local hero right now. Everybody kind of knows his name.
Flavor of the month, if you will.
Yeah. If Conor McGregor took all his money and he put on Conor McGregor's MMA show, whatever he calls it, he could be Mayweather.
Yeah.
He could go the way of boxing. And everybody knows that in boxing, everybody's hand is in your pocket, but it's a machine. It's a money-making machine. You see De La Hoya had his own organization.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tyson's got his own promotion, like you said, Mayweather. I think a lot of these, I mean, you gotta be super huge, obviously, in order to do it. You just can't have a lot of money. A McGregor, I think, could do that probably in a few years. I mean, I don't know about now. I don't know how much dough it would take to do that. He'd obviously have to partner with some people, but I'll be anxious to see, man, in the next 5 years, because a lot of people are echoing what you just said, that the UFC is done, which is weird because they seem to be on this like huge high right now. But from the Dana kicking out Ariel Helwani, that was just like a ugly kind of move. To the buyout rumors, to the fighter pay. You get so many fighters jumping ship. Not really any huge ones yet. Mitrione, Ben Henderson, Rampage.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, all the fighters are going. All of them. I mean, even me when I was there, I won't say I felt mistreated, but I'll say that, when I fought Xavier Pupapakam, that night I felt that I deserved a bonus. I really did, and I didn't get a bonus for that match. Don't get me wrong, I got a lot of bonuses, and I felt that.
First round knockout in 37 seconds. That's worth a bonus.
Against the guy they consider the best or the most exciting fighter at 185 pounds in the world, And don't get me wrong, at the time, I'll never discredit Xavier. He just kind of pissed me off with his showmanship. And when I say that, he pissed me off with the way he was shaking his ass and running his mouth. And that's what we have today. That every fighter is like that. They put these guys on the panel. They put 20 guys on a panel, and they're looking for their next Chael Sonnen. You see it happening, don't you?
No, this is what me and Pat's first, almost a year ago, me and Pat's first conversation, he was my first guest on my episode, and I got into this. I'm like, what do you think this Conor McGregor aspect, smack talking and all that stuff, is doing to the game? These guys are talking their dollars up, but they're more just talkers and not fighters. You're not finding this happy marriage of talkers and bangers. You know what I mean? Robbie Lawler's not a talker. You know what I mean? Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's not a big talker. Jacare Souza's not a big talker. That's, they don't quite get the same shine. I mean, obviously Robbie's the champ, but you know what I'm saying?
What I'm saying, I do know. I mean, I'm watching these shows, and I'm like, Dana White is sitting in the middle. You got all these titles, and you have 20 guys on these panels, and I'm like, what are these guys talking about? And Dana White's looking left and right, left and right, left and right, and he's kind of giggling, and it's like, what are these guys doing? Why aren't these guys training? Why aren't these guys, where's their clique? Where's their, where are their training partners? What are they doing on a daily basis? Why do they have these guys on a panel?
Well, here's Conor McGregor's big issue. He's supposed to be training for the dude who, the first dude to whoop his ass, and Dana's got him, traveling the world promoting the fight when he's supposed to be fucking Clubber Lang style in the dungeon, like you said, grinding, training, not hopping a plane, going here and here. I mean, it's just, that's got to be, I think that's part of the fight, promoting it, but it's like, man.
Right, to talk on a mic, like, nobody really cares. Like, I mean, I guess to the spectator, yeah, they want to see their fighter, but I mean, in the fight game, in the fight world, and this is how I looked at it. I mean, I had guys, I remember being at the UFC. I remember the weeks of the UFC, and they would say, hey, Drew, you need to come down to such and such booth. I was like, look, man, I'm 3 pounds over, and you're not going to get me down there today. But that's just how it was.
Right.
And I'm sorry. And for me, I'm a guy I come way down. I mean, I walk around, I'm probably in shape. I'm 203, 205. You know, I probably had no business fighting at 205, but for me to make 85, it was never easy. And I'll tell you right now, if somebody said, hey, you need to come to a press conference, I'd be like, yeah, right, dude.
Right.
Not today. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen. If my weight wasn't on, I didn't feel on point with my fight, or I didn't feel comfortable enough to do it, I wasn't going to do it.
Which is interesting, too, because, you know, I don't know. Obviously, that doesn't ride these days because Connor's, you know, their biggest money maker, and he tried to kind of pull that card, and he got pulled off the card. So anymore, I think everyone's so kind of sycophantic to be a part of the UFC. And like I said, get a W in the UFC, hopefully get a belt. Like, they just think the UFC is the be-all, end-all. And, you know, it's kind of the shit for the company right now, or for the sport right now. When I say the shit, like, it's kind of the top dog right now. But, you know, it's fluid, man. It's changing. It's obviously changing right before our eyes, as you said.
You know, I don't want to sit here and say that I think that the guys in the UFC were tougher than the guys now, but I think that the UFC name has been watered down. They got 5 million fighters, and again, you got these guys, and this is another thing. They have mastered the art of fighting without fighting.
Without fighting.
and if you notice, if you watch fights, you got a lot of jabs to the air, missed kicks, faulty shots that, you know, you take a shot, sprawl to your back, and then crawl up the cage and run away, mm-hmm. and then throw one punch and hope it lands. I'm telling you, when I watch these fights now, it's so watered down, and these guys are going to the cards, every fight,
mm-hmm.
going to the cards. If anybody ever watched me fight, I never believed in cards. Never, ever. I think I've gone to the cards maybe once or twice in my life or something.
I think it literally is twice. As I look at your record here, you got twice, and they're quite far apart. Yeah, no, yeah, it's interesting to see, like, back in the day, and I'm not going to keep you too much longer because I got to have you one final segment here before I let you go. You know, like the beginning, man, like Vitor Belfort just pounding out, you know, Vanderlei Silva, who used to scare the shit out of me, you know, in 44 seconds. Like, just back in the day, it was just killers, and there was fights. It was, like you said, it wasn't a lot of dancing, and there was nobody in there shaking their ass, really. It was about fights, for real.
Right.
And nowadays...
But, you know, you bring up that story, it brings something to light, you know, for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Vanderlei Silva was the scariest guy on the planet at the time that Vitor Belfort fought him.
Mm-hmm.
And Vitor Belfort, a lot of people don't know this, Vitor Belfort was scared to death to fight Vanderlei. A lot of people don't know that Vitor Belfort wouldn't come out of his hotel room. He was scared. He was depressed. He was sick.
He was like 18 still, too, wasn't he? 18, 19? He was young as shit then.
I think he was a young kid. I don't really know his age.
Yeah, he was young.
There's a huge story behind that fight. Vitor Belfort was ready for the fight, obviously, but he was scared to death of Vanderlei and went out there and smoked him. You know, and I'll say that, not to say I'm Vitor Belfort, but some of my fights were like that. You know, I was scared to death. Well, I remember going out and fighting Alicio Sakara. I was scared to death. Man.
He's a beast too. Yeah, he's one of them early cats.
I got that fight on 17 days notice. You know, I was scared to death.
UFC 65, ending in the first round in 4 minutes 7 seconds. Nice. That was a light heavyweight bout. That was light heavy.
At 205, and when I went out there, I'll say that I was scared to death. I shook some of that throughout my fight, but at the same time, I was fighting for my life. I really was. I was completely exhausted. By the time I beat that guy, I was completely exhausted. I probably wasn't in good enough shape to fight him at the time, but I fought for my life, and I happened to win. But it was a battle. I think that was a fight that could have gone either way.
Well, hell's bells, man. Yeah, it's been an interesting conversation with Drew Mcfedries, UFC veteran, talking about the early days, the heyday, and what's going on in the sport today. It's definitely changing, my man. and it's been awesome to get your insight on it. And like I said, man, we're going to chop it up again, get you back on again sometime, just see what you're up to, man. Maybe do a little update or maybe a card recap. We got a big card, maybe get you on to chop it up, see what you thought about it. I don't know if you watch it that much anymore, but it's an option. But before I let you... Yeah, we'll do a little highlight. Yeah, absolutely. Somewhat like a fighter companion like Joe Rogan, but not live. But before I let you go, my friend, and I definitely appreciate your time, I have a little segment that I ask all of my guests to partake of, Mr. Drew Mcfedries. It is called the Conspiracy Triangle of Doom. Sounds ominous, I know. It is very simple.
Sounds a little nerdy.
It sounds a little nerdy. Well, I'm a nerd, so, that's right up my alley. It is very simple. Right. 3 questions, my friend, that I ask. And you respond however you want. You can say yes or no, or, you can elaborate if you want to. But a yes or no is cool. It's all good. Are you prepared, sir?
Yep, I have no idea what you're talking about. So.
I'm asking you 3 questions. This is a conspiracy triangle.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I got you.
Question number 1. Drew Mcfedries, do you believe in the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence?
Absolutely. I watch so many videos, and I'm on everything about aliens and time travel.
Ancient aliens?
I like Ancient Aliens. I like the little show, but I think there's a lot more to it. Another thing is because I'm a fisherman, and so I'm always out on the water, and, there's the so-called conspiracy that the aliens are in the water. Totally believe in it. It would only make sense in certain ways.
Some subsurface aliens.
Have you ever seen the videos where they drop the glowing balls into the water and all the fish go to it?
I have not.
It's pretty serious, man.
Is it something on YouTube?
Yeah,
something I can check it out. Like, is it like a documentable? I can see it for myself without actually seeing it live.
Yeah, if you take like any kind of like neon colored glowing ball, and you put it down in the water, the fish are all over it. And there's like no explanation for it. Like, why would that be?
Are they attracted to light? Is that kind of like a bug, or like?
I have no idea. Like, it's the weirdest thing. I've even done it myself. Like, if you put light in the water, they'll just come to it naturally.
Very interesting. Reason. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fishologist, but definitely something worth looking into.
Fishologist.
Question.
No. Go ahead. I'm sorry.